This one's for all the orc war bosses out there looking at these new extra shiny gubbins and wondering, what does this mean for us? Let's talk about it. I always like to start off with a little bit of history because I think this helps us understand why GW chooses to renew the sculpts that they do renew. And this is not including all of the sculpts that we've already seen from the Orc Armageddon box and other releases like at the end of 10th. So just getting into it, the Trukk, the last time we've seen an updated Trukk, the War Trukk, was 4th edition, so 2008, a little over 14 years ago, 16 years ago, maybe even more actually, 18. I can't do math. I'm not a math guy. I have a master's in creative writing and I teach English, so math is not my thing. But 4th edition was when we saw the War Bikers and the Trukks release last. So 16 years is a lot of time. 18 years, sorry, said it again. It's a long time. So I think these models were due for an update. Knobs were shortly after in 2009, 5th edition. Pretty good sculpts. I think in all the knobs hold up still, but they do have a bit of that old feel with the deep recessed faces. I think you see that in a lot of the older orc models. The newest one is actually the Mech Boy, so it's a little surprising to me to see him get a new model release, but at the same time, he's a little small. His profile is not as impressive or noticeable across the tabletop, so I can see a justification for re-releasing this Mech Boy. And if you haven't noticed, I think a big thing to point out here is these models have a theme to them. And we'll get into this in a little bit, but I think GW is trying to send us a message for what kind of army orcs are going to become in the next edition. It's important to look at these releases and think about how are they going to play on the tabletop too. Not just how impressive do they look, because I do think these new models look impressive. We'll get into some of this, but that being said, there is a certain playstyle I think they're pushing us towards, and I don't necessarily hate it, because it hasn't been something we've seen for a long time. So the most important datasheet to look at first, in my opinion, is the Trukk. The Trukks have been a staple of the Orc army ever since their release, and even before the last release Trukk. I think people have always been running Mad Max Orcs inside vehicles, hopping out and doing some serious crumpage. So look at the base stats first. I always like to look at the base stats. We have the same profile as the Trukk from before. 12-inch move, T8, 4-up save, 6-up invuln, which is important, 10 wounds, 7-up leadership, 2 OC. So same as before. The Truck's profile is not any different than what it used to be. I think that's good. It didn't need to change. T8 is fine. Having a 6-up invuln is okay. 10 wounds is whatever. Trucks are cheap. They're meant to just drive up and die or run around the battlefield and do actions after everybody gets out. So I'm not freaking out over that. They still have Deadly Demise D3. They still have Firing Deck 12. So you will absolutely still be using Trucks as a shooting platform. So, like I said, talking about playstyle, the Mech Boy getting released is important alongside this Trukk. We don't know anything about the Mech Boy's datasheet yet, but I can assume he's probably going to see good play around the Trucks if his rules stay anything close to what they used to be, giving +1 to hit to a vehicle until the next command phase, or movement phase, I believe it is, actually. Which is weird. He's, like, I think one of the only ones that's movement phase. But that being said, Trucks, still good on their stat profile alone. You've got the dual big shooter, so the shooting went up a little bit, right? Let's look at these weapons. Shooting went up a little bit. Dual big shooter, lethal hits, and rapid fire 4. So if you are within 18 inches, 10 shots, no AP though, but lethal hits, hitting on 5s against non-monster vehicle as well, right? That's important caveat. I think the Boyz sheet is very similar. We'll look at that in a minute. You also have this extra weapon. I'm a fan of this, the rocket launcher. You only get 2 shots, but you have a couple profiles here. I like the single target one, 2 attacks, 5 up, strength 10, -2, 3 damage. That's the Busta. The Blasta is more of a blast shot, right? 2 shots, blast 2. I don't know. You're probably not using that one too much. I'd still rather use the other one. Maybe you'll pick off a couple Terminators randomly or do some damage to a transport or a light vehicle. Strength 10 is a big deal, but, against T11, T12, it's not going to do much. I'm probably going to try and shoot at infantry mostly with this thing still. The melee weapons are where things get really interesting, though, because Trukks before, the only weapon they really had was the Wrecking Ball alongside their rams and wheels. But now you've got the option here with the Buzzsaw or the Grab and Claw. You can only have one of these, so you can't have two. Personally, I'm probably going to gravitate towards the Grab and Claw. Strength 10, AP 2, 2 damage. Sounds great. The Buzzsaw, maybe if you're fighting a lot of light infantry. What is really impressive is this new transport rule. The new Trukk rule, piling out. In your opponent's movement phase, when an enemy unit ends a move within an 8-inch of this model, units embarked within this model can make a disembark move using rapid disembark. So, this means you can't do any extra things on your turn. I think you might not even be able to charge if I remember correctly about the rapid disembark move rules. But this is still a decent rule to have. This means you can move a truck up with a bunch of flash kits, tank bustas, lootas, some scary kind of shooting. If your opponent moves close, maybe to threaten the truck, to destroy the truck, you can just hop out and then you could overwatch in the opponent's turn with something that started the turn inside of a transport on their turn. So a lot of reactive potential with these trucks. I think there's definitely already stopgaps to keep you from doing multiple reactive moves, but we'll see what happens with the Codex. Maybe there's going to be some kind of ways that we can move a truck up, have the guys hop out if the opponent moves close enough, and then maybe we could charge or do snap shooting or some kind of blood surge move. That would be nice, but I think there's still some merit to having the truck up the board next to an objective. They move close, boys hop out, 2 OC each, you steal an objective from somebody on their turn. That's really impressive. And with the new core rules, with the way mission scoring and mission play works, stealing objectives on the opponent's turn is incredibly useful. You can stop Thousand Suns from getting their Hex Warp buffs, Chaos Demons from having their Shadow of the Warp. There's a lot of potential play here for stealing objectives and just being annoying to your opponent, especially with Grots even. Grots hopping out, stealing a point. I think it's awesome. These new trucks look really cool. And the last thing I want to point out before we move on, they have the Speed Freaks keyword. That is a big deal. They did not have the Speed Freaks keyword previously, so I'm curious to see, along with the Codex, what are these new keywords and rules going to do for us. I think we're going to be a very fast, reactive, and also pressure army, like we still have been, but maybe more in line with some of the more competitive armies now. As you've seen already, in 10th and 11th edition, we're doing quite well, so excited to see what this does for us. Now, I said that I didn't want to spend too much time on, models that had already been released, but I think it's important if we're talking about how Orks are going to be a different army in 11th edition once this Codex drops. I think we need to look at the Boyz datasheet, especially along with the Trukk. These are our two vital, most important datasheets in our army, so these are going to tell us the most about how Orks are going to be played. The first thing to note is that knobs are going up to 3 wounds. I don't think this is the craziest thing, but it does mean knobs are going to survive 2 damage to attacks now. So that might be interesting. You might be left with the knob alive more often than not now. So something to think about. We are going to get lethal hits on the charge because of this Tide of Muscle rule. In the fight phase, if this unit made a charge move, that unit's melee attacks have lethal hits. That is so strong, especially if you're going into vehicles, monsters, anything bigger. Boys in the past have always struggled against those larger targets. So being able to just get more damage through is great. I think we're going to like that. It also means we're going to be deadlier outside of the WA. So before, Boyz have sort of relied on Makari's lethal hits aura. In Warhorde, we've relied on sustained hits all the time, but now that's just baked into your datasheet. It doesn't matter what detachment you're running. It doesn't matter, who's your warlord or what unit, what character is attached to the unit. You just get lethal hits. That's awesome. I'm a huge fan of this. Very minor thing. Well, I say this is minor, but I think this is huge actually. Never too busy to fight. Being engaged does not prevent this unit from being eligible to start an action. That is crazy. The one thing that I've noticed about Orcs so far in 11th is that we struggle, unless you're running Tactical Brigade, with any of the army dispositions that require actions on objectives or actions on terrain features. Tactical Brigade lets you advance and fall back and do actions. That's really the only detachment that really can manage that, and now they're not disruption anymore. I think Tactical Brigade is recon now, which maybe makes more sense, but actions, that's the action detachment, but you're not doing actions. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. Makes sense that recon, but also now we don't have anything that does actions easier. So there's that, right? There's some good with the bad, but being able to do actions in melee is huge. I think that's what made us really good in 10th when the Codex dropped. I'm pretty sure that happened. That's why Green Tide was so good, because you could go up, charge, action, and it was great. Then they took it from us, but now we have it back. So we'll see how long this lasts. It might be too good. We'll have to see what happens over time. And the last datasheet ability that's a big deal is ammo runts. So in the shooting phase, once per battle, per unit, I can give my unit +1 to hit. That's huge. That's basically ignores cover. So if you're shooting at something in cover, you're still going to hit on 5s, but guess what? You hit on 5s anyways. I think that's fine. And again, you have lethal hits against non-monster, non-vehicle. That's huge. And rapid fire 1, that's a lot of shots. Again, I'm not a math guy, but 19 shooters times 3 shots is sort of a big deal. It's like 72 or something, I think, if I remember correctly. I don't know. Again, not the math guy. It's a lot of shots. I think getting +1 to hit on that is crazy. Still no AP on shooters, but I guess that's the price you pay for the number of shots. I'm not upset about it. It still means we can play the shooting phase finally, which is great. And the last thing to really note is that generally all of our strength is going up by 1. So that used to be huge because that was the WA buff in 10th, and then here at the start of 11th was +1 strength, +1 attack. We are just getting more strength all the time. That is crazy strong. I'm looking forward to this. Choppas at strength 5 means you're pretty much always wounding Space Marines on 3s or 4s and into like Terminators. So I'm happy about this. Power Claws going to strength 10 is also insane. I think people should be afraid of Orks. Boys are just going to tear stuff up, and I'm cool with that. It's one of our best units. I think they should be the threat, and they're the staple of the army. And you're not playing Orks if you're not bringing Boyz. So I don't want to throw too much stuff at you, so we'll just keep those 2 data sheets there. But I think that tells us enough that what we need to know. So let's talk a little bit about how these releases are going to change Orks overall. So as I said before, we're going to be a more mobile army. We're going to be more reactive. If you haven't seen the new WA rule, and I'll talk about this when the Codex comes out, I just don't like to speculate. So I wanted to keep this video to just what are the things we do know. I don't want to guess about what Orks are going to be doing or what the new units are going to be doing. But what we can see is that orcs are more mobile, we're more reactive. We are going to move quicker. We're going to be able to hop out of our transports and do stuff. We're going to be able to action in melee. We're going to be more mobile. We're going to be doing more stuff around the board. This is good. MSU style. So the new knobs, we don't know what their profiles are like yet, but knobs are one of the only data sheets that we can take that isn't 10 models in terms of infantry. So having a 5-man unit means you've got more MSU playstyle, multiple small units. You're having more activations. You're running around the board and doing more. So we'll see what that does for them. But overall, I think you're going to be happy running 10-man boys. They're going to be great. You can do the leaders. I love Banner Knob right now with War Boss. So 10 boys plus leaders are going to be great. Snagga boys have always been that way too. So MSU, you're going to have a bunch of units running around the board doing things. And I think the biggest thing is we're finally going to get to play the shooting phase. I said in one of my videos in the past, I've been playing since the start of 10th edition. We basically have not had a shooting phase since the start of 10th edition. I know some people love tank bustas and flash kits, but they are so swingy a lot of the time. And like, I find myself not bothering bringing those units. My best shooting units for most of 10th edition were 3 kill rigs, just because you had the torrent las cannons. Now, boys have lethals against non-monster, non-vehicle. Nazdreg is also going to bring a lot of shooting. Yeah, +1 to hit from boys even, right? So lethals, +1 to hit. There's a lot of shooting that's going to be happening for us. So also, we're going to be more impactful outside of the WA. Our strength went up, right? Knobs are at 3 wounds. We're going to be shooting a little better. So generally better outside of the WA. I wonder what they're going to do for us toughness wise, protection wise though, because you've still got a lot of our units with t-shirt saves, knobs with a 4-up. I don't know if they're going to stay that way. Mega knobs even are tanky, but they don't have an invuln outside of the WA, so high AP weapons kind of just shred them. So we'll see what the Codex does for us. But my opinion from the 2 data sheets that I showed you so far today, Trukks and Boyz, I think we are going to be more impactful outside of the WA. Nazdreg is also going to mean that there is a potential to bring some more Orc characters back. Nazdreg hasn't had an official model release as far as I know, and it's interesting because he was first introduced as a character in White Dwarf in somebody's army showcase. So it's nice to see him get a model and a little bit more lore. He's in Total War, and he's going to be here in the tabletop, so I imagine he's going to be really strong. And maybe I'll do a video about his datasheet at some point. Big guy, big guns. Hopefully, this means Captain Badbrook and Grotznik could come back. The only reason I think they left is because they were a couple of our characters who were still Forge World resin, or just the old resin kits. So maybe we could see a future Grotznik in a plastic kit because of this. Would be nice. I would enjoy that. It would be good to see more named Orc characters, because I personally love running all of them. They bring a little something to the table. So that's all I got for you today. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll talk about more Orcs. The Codex is coming up soon, and we can talk about Nazdreg once he gets closer as well. So remember, whoa!